it took quite a long time to get the actual product finished, I think.
It did. It was about a year, or actually no, it was about nine months around there. To frame it correctly, we were planning on building 1,000 of these things in our garage. All right, like if we had hit that mark, we were going to say, "Wow, this is a tremendous success." Which I mean, it's a tenfold increase in product from our previous one. I think that's a reasonable, aspiration. Being thrust in to have 70,000, I think 68,000 backers on there changes that nature significantly, and forced us to really look at, great, you get the economies of scale, but you have to realize none of us knew a thing about doing that point in time. And furthermore, crowdfunding was still like, yes, we have this. You're going to manufacturers that are not used to dealing with a company of our size. I mean, if I think at the time we're looking at manufacturers, it's about 10 kind of, spotty-faced engineers showing up saying, hey, by the way, we like to build this product, for you. Can you show us how this is done? It's not exactly the most well received from a, manufacturing plant, but through push come to shove, like we end up figuring it out. I mean, you kind of have to along the lines there, and then you realize really why there's all these people that study the discipline of supply chain management, because suddenly this depending upon this, depending upon this, depending on this, introduces a massive amount of complexity around there. And so, I'd actually kind of say while it was going from start to there was a period of time, and it's almost miraculous. I don't want to kind of do that we figured it out the first time around there. Now the communities and stuff have become more developed. There are companies that have seen this niche space and they're like, all right, we're going to exist to help broker that. And there's, companies like ourselves and other things here that have figured it out before. So you can turn to and say, hey, how do I get access to a plastic manufacturer in this region of China? And who's the person I need to talk to that can tell me about the QA control on that? And now we can say, hey, talk to this person, do this around here. And it's right there. Yeah, so this is, I think, interesting. I see as I go outside of the Silicon Valley community, particularly kind of in Europe and other areas, there is a nature that's unique to Silicon Valley, which I think has fundamentally made it what it is today. And that is, at all levels of an organization, people on a one-to-one basis are very willing to share information. I mean, very intimate information about the successes and failures of the business. Who are their contacts, who are things there that, from an outside perspective, most larger established businesses would never dream of doing that. But it creates this free flow of information, and what people realize is that if everyone does this, collectively the group as a whole is lifted around there. Yeah, the pizza is getting bigger. And this is like, if you spend time in the Silicon Valley area, like this is pervasive. One thing you're learning is every discussion is tech, which can be frustrating after a period of time. And, everyone just is happy to share what it is and help each other out.
So how did you keep your customers satisfied because of the long production time of the actual product? Was it difficult?
So yes, when you're managing a crowd, if you don't give them what they want, they start to get increasingly dissatisfied around there. But the way you handle that is being as transparent as you possibly can. Like, particularly in a kind of crowdfunding situation, the idea that everything is going to go according to plan is ludicrous. It's not going to happen. And some people will set up an expectation that it is. Other people will actually just want an excuse to complain and point you out. I mean, that is kind of, that's human sport, right? Yeah, I mean, like everyone loves to complain. And that, but
apologizing is also free. So
yeah, it's there. The thing is, what you kind of have to realize is you have the vocal minority, and then you have kind of the rational middle crowd here. And by communicating to them and telling them what's going on, you build trust. Right? And then they start to say, like, hey, things may not go into plan, but Pebble, they're good people. They're going to do what they need to do that. And then this carries it one step further out here, is that when you do get that vocal minority or things that dislike or people that are kind of being aggressive above and beyond, you're actually not the person, the company or you as the individual are not the ones that actually have to respond to that. The community itself will say, hey, wait, this is not what we believe in as a group. And then they'll be vocal and say, let's rein that back in. And that message is much, much stronger. I mean, that's a fundamental of like all community growth. Lay the seeds early, build the trust, and at some point in time it becomes an engine that kind of keeps turning on its own right. Do you have a question? Why are you here today?
I'm doing an internship at a government company that helps cultural professionals acquire financing, also crowdfunding,
Yeah.
sort of other means of
Financing, yeah. Cool.
So I'm just here to suck in all the
Heard a little bit about it. Sounds good.
But we need you, so we need that kind of.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. I asked you the same question before. Why, if you have a product like this, which is still quite unique, you start selling it over resellers after a successful campaign? And why don't you say we make a kick-ass website and there you can buy a product?
Yeah. So kind of let me I guess reiterate and clear. So it's just a question about why are we going back to Kickstarter versus the alternative, or no?
You had the first Kickstarter
campaign.
Was
Yep.
successful, then you have a product which is popular.
Yep.
And then you decide to start selling it over resellers.
Yep.
And the next campaign is Kickstarter. But my question is, why did you decide to go over resellers and not continue in the online world?
Yeah. So got it. So essentially why did we jump into, a reseller on there? And kind of two things. I mean, you obviously, when you start and you build a business, you are both learning about the business process in your market as you go. So yes, I can be successful. And this is something that's really interesting, Y Combinator, the accelerator. One of the things is they may have had a success or a failure in an area, but they're going to keep trying. Just because I figured out one thing that works doesn't mean I should stop trying the other thing. So on one level, we want to go into resellers because, it is an avenue to get your product out in the market. It's a different set of customers around here, and you want to learn how it works. And the product out there, it also gives us a lot of reach. A reseller will put us in front of a vastly different population of individuals, and so it is an incentive. It does introduce a lot of asymmetries about how you do your business. Suddenly, online is great. You can do whatever you want, and everything's fine. Once you introduce a third party, suddenly prices need to be in alignment, and you need to start coordinating that. And as the number of parties grow, it becomes increasingly complex, even just simply forecasting demand. If you now introduce 1,000 Best Buy stores, that means you actually need to hit the prediction right 1,000 times, because if one store in Des Moines, Iowa doesn't sell, but they brought in 1,000 units, that's 1,000 units you need to manufacture, but are going to be sitting on the shelf, and they're not going to dynamically move it from there to the store in Los Angeles, California that's running out. And so, it is an experiment we did. It's something that's become part of who we are. We're definitely going to move forward. I mean, you will see Pebble Time show up in retail. We work with retailers here in the Netherlands and Benelux regions and the rest of the EU that are going to become increasing parts of it, because it's about getting product to a wider consumer, but we will, again, continue this online things. And it's interesting, you look at a company like Xiaomi out of China, which really sidestepped that entire model. For them, it worked great because it gave them a degree of flexibility that they just wouldn't have had otherwise out there. So, to each their own on there. We are where we are because it's kind of the choices we made. So
Back to crowdfunding,
yeah.
if we may. Did you have any advice, 3 things that you've learned in your crowdfunding
Yeah.
experience, or things that the do's and the don'ts that you want
Do's
to
and the
give us?
don'ts. So I think I touched on one thing, transparency. Your reputation as a company is invaluable. You want to make sure you do things right from the beginning, and that will bring you that will pay off in droves down the road. Another thing is that do your best to manage expectations up front. The crowd can be brutal, and this to their nature. So the more you can manage the eventualities out there and kind of say, hey, if I say this, it could be misinterpreted. And the other thing I'm going to say is really test your messaging early on. And it can be anyone. It can be friends. It can be this and that. But you get so wrapped up in what you build that you can't have an objective outside opinion. And so get those objective outside opinions, and it will reshape the way things that you thought were clear as day mean nothing to someone that has the context. So thank you all. It's been great there. Good luck.